Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. We're back with our second weekly podcast covering the latest in the NHL playoff. Of course, we've got some Ducks news to discuss as well. Jake is here with me to break it all down. Jake, I gotta say, I'm a little fired up right now for multiple reasons, but I'm just fired up for this podcast. What about you?
Yeah, I'm excited. It's been an awesome week. It hit me this weekend. I think this week was the first time where it almost felt like the week went by slow in a way because there was just so much hockey on. Like it hit me, I was like, it doesn't feel like I didn't have hockey for like 3 or 4 months before this because there's just been so much during this week. It's been awesome. Because there's been 5 games a day, basically 4 or 5 games a day up until the last couple days where it was significantly lower, but it's been fantastic. And the hockey, shocking. I mean, I kind of came into this expecting it to be good, but also came in not fully knowing what to expect. The hockey's been really, really good. It's been really fun games, really high paced. I think even you saw some round robin games were kind of iffy and but majority of even the round robin games were competitive and teams were really pushing it. But there definitely was a difference between those and the qualifying round games. But it was fantastic hockey, really fun. And I think this week I realized how much I missed not only watching the games, but talking about the games. You, me, CJ, in our group text message, just talking about games each night was really nice. Being able to give you a little bit of crap because of your picks was also fantastic. We'll go over that a little bit more in a bit, but turns out my picks came out pretty nicely.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that. Don't worry. You'll have your day in the sun or whatever the expression is. You'll have your time in the spotlight to bash me, essentially. We know that's what's going to happen.
Glory. Just bask in my glory.
Let's talk about the Anaheim Ducks, though. We're getting really lucky on these podcasts because the Ducks do at least one thing a week to give us ammo to talk about. So thank you, Anaheim Ducks. Keep it coming. This one, though, so last week we talked about the Sonny Milano and Troy Terry extensions. This week, the topic is a little less exciting. Sorry if I'm burying the lead here, but Jacob Larsson was re-signed to a 2-year extension with an annual average value of $1.2 million a year. And so it's interesting because if you look at his contract, the contract he was on with the Ducks, it was a 2-way deal. This one, just like the other 2 guys that the Ducks have re-signed, he is going to make the same amount of money, regardless of if he's playing in San Diego or in Anaheim, which is a big deal for Jacob Larsson because even though he did play a lot of games in Anaheim last season, he was still kind of one of those back and forth guys, much less last year. It's been a descending curve, but not necessarily established. So let's just get into some reactions first before we get into the nitty gritty of the deal. Jake, what was your reaction to this deal coming down?
My first reaction was just kind of like, what? It came out of nowhere a little bit. It's not necessarily shocking. He was an RFA. I don't believe he had arbitration rights at the end of it. He was on his ELC, so he was kind of at the mercy of the Ducks. I think the thing that was kind of shocking was him getting over $1 million, but you look at the comparables. If you go to Cap Friendly's compare this contract tool, and the comparables for it are, Brendan Gooley is a comparable. Christian Juice, another comparable, funny enough.
Interesting.
Caleb Jones, you actually have Christian Juice's last contract with Washington kind of being in that realm. So you have a lot of guys that are in that 22 to 23 range, signing very similar type of deals, 2-year deals worth 1 to 1.5 in typically. And so, granted, Brendan Gooley was $800K, but still, this is kind of what you expect. And the other thing for the Ducks that I think is critical out of this and why I think it is a 2-year deal and not necessarily a 1-year deal is the expansion draft. And so a big thing for the expansion draft, for those that don't remember, is in the previous one, there was a 40-70 rule where you had to expose 1 defenseman and 2 forwards that had each of them played in 40 games in the prior season or 70 games in the prior 2 seasons. And they were under contract for the season after the expansion draft. Essentially, the reasoning for it is the NHL didn't want only players that weren't NHLers being exposed. Basically, teams found a way to just protect every single NHLer on the roster and only expose their AHL team. They wanted people to have to expose at least 1 defenseman and 2 forwards that were actual NHLers in the prior 2 seasons and were under contract. So that's kind of where this plays in my mind, is that Larson gets a 2-year deal. He played in, let me see real quick, 60 games. 60 games in the prior season. So he's only 10 away from hitting that 70 game mark that's needed. So even if he didn't play a lot for the Ducks next year, he'd hit that. And then also you factor in, I don't know if it's going to be 40-70. It may be less than each of those because of the fact that this season wasn't a full season. This season was an 80 game or 70 some odd game season as compared to an 82. So they may lessen that. So overall, to me, this is the Ducks locking up a guy for 2 years that was a guy that was drafted. You don't want to give up on your first round pick just yet. But it was also done looking ahead towards the expansion draft to have a guy that would be available to be exposed that would meet the expansion draft requirements. Because you look at the rest of the fence, here's the guys that are under contract for the 21-22 season, which is part of this. You have Cam Fowler, Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson, and then Jacob Larsson. You also probably will have Brendan Gooley will be a part of that, being under a 2-year deal, I believe. Let me just double check that really quickly. But Brendan Gooley probably will be in that boat. You also probably will have Josh Mahura in that boat. But the issue with them is they probably won't have played enough NHL games by that point in time to meet the 40-70 rule. So it really is a situation that was kind of looking ahead and planning ahead for that expansion draft.
Yeah, that is an interesting angle. I also find it interesting that the first reaction to this is more about how this fits into the expansion draft than what the player actually brings to the table.
I mean, that kind of tells you everything you need to know, though, doesn't it?
It does, because if you look at Jacob Larsson's last 3 seasons with the Ducks, or even just looking at last season, he was one of the worst defensemen in the NHL, let alone on the Ducks. And it's not just that he was on a bad team. It's that in the role that he was in individually, he just didn't bring a whole lot to the table. He was bad in his own zone, didn't really bolster the offense in any meaningful way. In fact, you could argue he was a drag when he was out there. Of course, he was saddled with some pretty poor partners. You know, he played with Corbinian Holzer a lot, and we all know how that goes. But even still, Jacob Larsson is a former first-round pick, a late first-round pick. Still, it's a guy that you would like to see some kind of progress, some kind of sign, some kind of indication that at age 23, he's going to become a regular NHL defenseman. And at this point, it's going to be a huge win for the Ducks if Larson can even become a good to decent third line defenseman. That is really his ceiling at this point. I think that the ship has completely sailed on him being a second pairing guy, much less a first pairing guy. And it's a shame, because I think that in the beginning of his career, he did, at least on an eye test level, appear to be a little more solid. He looked like he was confident with the puck and had good mobility, but that has really faded. There's a lot of talk about how his knee injury has affected his development, but man, it destroyed his development. So I don't know how much of that really explains how this has gone for him. And I hate to compare players because sometimes it's a little unfair to both, but I can definitely use that when looking at the decisions that the front office has made. And the Ducks traded Marcus Pettersson for Daniel Sprong back when they thought that they needed more defensive depth. And I really do think that part of the reason why they did that is because they thought, well, we have Jacob Larsson in the pipeline as a left shot D. And Pettersson was very, very good defensively for the Penguins last season. And even if you go back for the last 3 years, he's been a decent, slightly above average to average defenseman, which, I mean, that is, like I was saying, that is Jacob Larsson's ceiling at this point. And you kind of have to say they picked the wrong guy to trade away.
Well, and even tracking back even further, you could make the argument that one of the reasons why they trade Shea Theodore was because they had Jacob Larsson in the system, and there's the left-handed D. I know we all made the comparison at the time between Brandon Montour and Shea Theodore for that deal, but to me, in my head at the time, it made more sense to compare it to Larson, because Larson was the guy that was going to come in eventually and take that left-handed shot side role, and to me, he just hasn't. And granted, he's young enough where maybe you could see some development. I don't want to completely write him off, but the signs aren't great, because he is currently, let me just look, he is 23 years old. So he is starting to enter his prime. So what he was this past year, yes, there can be some development in his game, no doubt, and he could develop into a better player. But we also kind of know through aging curves that this is kind of who he is. He may get a little bit of a plus from it, but he's getting close to what he is. And if you're not seeing those flashes even, then that's a big issue. So if you look at him, by the way, he was a negative goals above replacement player. So he was worse than a replacement level player per Evolving Hockey in the previous season, with his defense actually being the worst part of his game, which is not great. He was negative 1.2 goals above replacement in terms of offense. So in terms of even strength offense, whatever little time he got in the power play, but he was negative 3.6. So essentially what that means is if you put a replacement level player out there, they would have allowed 3.6 less goals than he would have. On the defensive side.
It's not perfect math, but essentially he is below average.
But it gives you a representation of what he is and how his performance was of the prior season. And so I think that at the end of the day, this feels like a contract that was given to him because of the expansion draft and because of he's a first round pick. I think
also, what else are they going to do with him?
True.
Were they just, he was in restricted free agent, so
True.
there's not a market for him. The Ducks are the only team that could sign him, and so what were they going to do? Not qualify him, give him a qualifying offer, and have him become a UFA?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been a pretty shocking move, but I think for the Ducks, it makes more sense to keep him around, see if maybe he can still develop into a good player, and if not, then at least you've given yourself some more flexibility for the expansion draft. So I think from a Ducks perspective, it's an okay deal. I still don't love it just because he hasn't shown that he's worth that deal. And on top of that, it doesn't do anything to abate this whole logjam on the blue line that they have right now. So do I think Jacob Larsson could become a good player, or at this point just a serviceable lineup guy? I think he could be. He has shown very, and I mean very brief flashes of having good on-ice results when he's played with somewhat better partners. Like he has had a little time with Hampus Lindholm in the past, and you could talk yourself into him becoming a decent third pairing guy. It's just the evidence for that is so slim. And he routinely looks so out of sorts in his own zone, just poor positioning, bad decision making, and he has the physical tools. I don't think he's a guy who's necessarily lacking in strength or athleticism. I just think that his hockey sense, especially defensively, is just, it's not all there, and that's a problem when you're going up against NHL players who are not really caring whether or not you've developed well at that point. So we shall see. Hopefully for him it works out. Hopefully on this kind of prove it deal, he can become a solid defenseman at the NHL level and can command a higher salary. That would be a great outcome for both Jacob Larsson and the Ducks, but consider me skeptical of that possibility.
Same. 100% agree.
Yep. So let's, Noel, did you have anything else to say on that, on Jacob Larsson?
No, I am all good. I guess let's jump in real quick to that the expansion draft is tomorrow, because I just saw this. The
expansion draft?
Sorry, not expansion draft. Draft lottery.
Yes.
Greg Wyshynski just tweeted out at 8:10 p.m., so 3 minutes ago, for the NHL draft lottery draw tomorrow night. It will not be behind closed doors. Because it's a 1 in 8 chance, Gary Bettman will pull the winning ball from the machine live on air.
Love it.
Love it. That is fantastic.
Milk it for what it's worth.
Yeah, there's no fancy math in this where there's different number sequences. It's probably going to be 8 balls, and Gary Bettman just reaches his hand in and grabs one.
Man, that is terrifying.
That is fantastic.
A fan of these teams.
That is fantastic.
For the fans, it's great. I love it personally.
But picture if he pulls a Maple Leafs ball though out. The conspiracy.
I really
theories.
hope not. That is definitely so for those who don't know, if you are a patron or if you want to be a patron, we are going to do a bonus episode tomorrow night reacting to the draft lottery. So it's going to be awesome.
We'll do that. We'll get into some previews of the next series also.
We'll actually, so for now, we will give you a taste of that, because now that we've discussed the Ducks news, let's move on to the week that was. So the NHL qualifying round is officially over, which means that we have to go back now and look at our selections, our predictions that we made. And boy, did I make some mistakes. I'm going to get out ahead of it here and just say that I made some pretty bad
You
picks.
you were saved in this. So for those of you that
But
don't,
no, I was not saved. Well, let's just hold on. Go ahead. Say what you're gonna say.
we had a beer bet on these picks where the first place, I think we said this on the last show, the person that got the most right would get a six pack. The person that was worst would have to buy the six pack, and the tiebreaker, if all things were tied, would be the correct number of games.
Yep.
Felix
And
made out.
CJ and I tied.
Felix made out by the skin of his teeth. He had to rely on the games to not have to buy me a six pack.
They don't ask how. They don't ask how.
True.
I got it. I got it done.
So
let's go over the picks here, because I mean there's a lot to talk about. Especially, I'm assuming, even if you're not a huge fan of all these teams or series, you were probably watching this week. Be honest. Even if you're a Ducks fan, hockey is on your TV, on your streaming device. You got to tune in. Let's just start with the series that was so very, very good. Pittsburgh against Montreal. So Jake had Montreal in 5, and I had Pittsburgh in 5, going against my own team, the Canadiens. And wouldn't you know it, the Canadiens won in 4.
Yeah.
So neither of us. Well, Jake got the team right. He got Montreal, didn't get the games.
Yeah.
But what a series that was. I mean, maybe to me the most exciting series, obviously, as a fan of the team, it was pretty awesome to watch. Carey Price turned the clock back, but hey, credit to you for showing more confidence in my Canadiens than I did.
And my prediction wasn't completely off either, in terms of if you looked at the rationale behind it. Carey Price played like the Carey Price of old. We saw a renaissance in his game.
Well,
and Montreal, now granted, they didn't have a dominating 5-on-5 performance like I was hoping when you look at their numbers.
But they kept it pretty even.
Yeah,
they kept it pretty even.
They were
in some games they even surpassed the.
Yeah, they were at 48.22 expected goals for percentage on the series. So 50, basically pretty close to 50-50 when you're talking about a short series like that. And so, I mean, this was a series where basically everyone was picking Pittsburgh besides analytics. You look at a lot of analytic models. Yes. A lot of analytic models were predicting that Montreal could come out on top, with Evolving Wild, I think, actually giving Montreal the highest chance of moving on out of any team.
I think that what I underrated or kind of didn't do enough research on was how bad Pittsburgh was at the end of the season. Because when I started reading Pittsburgh writers throughout the series, I didn't realize how much skepticism and pessimism there was in Pittsburgh about this team going into it.
I believe when we did our Patreon episode previewing the series, I believe that I mentioned that Sean Tierney had these charts where he would go.
Yeah, but you waffled on that.
I did also, because I 100% waffled, because I said that who knows if a rolling 7-game average really matters going into a playoffs when you've had 3 months off, but it does give you some indication of how they were playing with their team at that time.
Well, I think the big thing for Pittsburgh was that there were some structural issues that were not changed in this series that really affected them, aka the Justin Schultz-Jack Johnson pairing, which was inexplicably kept together throughout the whole series, even though Jack Johnson was on the ice for something like 6 goals against, something like that, something incredible like that. So Mike Sullivan refused to go away from that. Putting in Matt Murray definitely turned out to be a mistake in that. I think he was okay in the first, 2 games, but the over-the-shoulder goal against Jeff Petrie, that was the nail in the coffin. And then Tristan Jarry was fine in Game 4, but it just wasn't enough. And then, of course, the Pittsburgh Penguins' best players just didn't really come through. I mean, Evgeny Malkin kind of just sleptwalk through the series. And the Canadiens, to their credit, they really capitalized on that. Carey Price was great, but also they had a lot of great contributions. We talked about Jeff Petrie, Nick Suzuki, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So great series overall. As a Canadiens fan, I know I've already been asked about it. I am disappointed. I'm not going to lie that the Habs now no longer have a chance at Alexis Lafreniere or the 9th overall pick. But at the same time, I think it's great to see that the young players actually were some of the best players in this series, and that Carey Price, when rested, when in a big game situation, can still deliver. So there's still a lot of positive to take away.
And I'm going to jump in on that real quick, because as everyone probably knows on this, I'm very much pro lose to get first overall if you don't think you have a chance of doing anything. And we'll get into that a little bit more with another team coming up. But to me, Montreal's a team where, yeah, it may have been more beneficial long-term for them to lose. No doubt, because
objectively, it was more beneficial.
You could get Alexis Lafreniere. But I also think that this team, they have a shot of going deep, because it's not as if they're a team that gets outplayed. Like I said, their 5-on-5 numbers were ridiculously good through the course of the season, and really what let them down was Carey Price and not being able to put the puck in the net with their chances. And so we saw that they got timely goal scoring in the series. We saw that while they didn't dominate play, they were held even with Pittsburgh. And so they're going up against a Flyers team that, yes, is very much in form right now, but to me, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
They can beat Philly.
Yeah, they could. I think that they have the chance to beat Philly. And I think that is one of the best matchups that you probably could have asked for out of the four round robin teams, was to get Philly. And so I think if you're a Montreal fan, you should feel pretty good, because you have a chance of moving on to the conference semifinals. And kind of once you hit there, who knows how far you can go.
I think they could have beaten Tampa Bay as well. That is my hot take, that I'm kind of glad I'm never going to have to find out if I was right or wrong on that. But Tampa Bay, without Steven Stamkos and their blue line kind of scares me.
Well, no Hedman either, potentially.
When you have, and no Victor Hedman, potentially, yeah. And when you have Zach Bogosian out there in the year 2020, the year of our Lord 2020, in your top four, I just don't know if that's a great thing to have, even if he's playing well. So anyway, let's move on here.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna bend the knee. I'm gonna bend the knee, because this was a very contentious debate.
It was.
On the Patreon prediction pod. Yeah. So Jake had Carolina in 4, and I had New York in 4, and it was, I believe, Carolina in 3. Carolina swept the series. I'm just gonna give my 2 cents here. Carolina steamrolled New York. I don't think New York maybe looked like they were in it for about 15 minutes in total of this series.
But goaltending.
Well, the goaltending was, I don't think it was the reason that they lost.
Just giving you crap, because that was supposed to be the big difference maker in this series per you.
Well, the other difference maker to me was that New York was going to be able to generate offense.
True.
And they were not able to do that. I mean, Carolina stifled their transition game, and that was really it. I mean, that it kind of exposed that the Rangers are kind of a one-trick pony offensively, and a lot of people criticized Artemi Panarin in that series. I don't really think that you can put it all on him, because he was, I mean, systematically, the Hurricanes just shut down everything that the New York Rangers threw at them. And so I don't necessarily know if I'm still confident in saying the Hurricanes are going to go deep, because they probably beat one of the worst teams in this qualifying round.
Yeah.
But they look good. I mean, they didn't show any indication that they can't do it, especially because they were missing Dougie Hamilton and Brett Pesce. So they could go deep as well. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, like I said when we did the prediction on the series, you have one of the worst teams in the league at 5-on-5 with 47% expected goals for percentage, versus one of the best teams in the league with 52.37 expected goals for percentage. So you had the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Hurricanes were just a better team, deeper team, and it showed. The only thing the Rangers had potentially going for them was if the power play would cash in, and they weren't really able to do that. And the Hurricanes showed that maybe their one flaw was goaltending, but Mrazek stepped up and played a great game. Reimer, when he was called upon on a back-to-back, came in and played fantastic. And I think that there's actually a question that has to be had of, who do you start in game 1? Do you start Reimer or Mrazek? Because Reimer was that good in game 3.
I think it'll be Mrazek.
Probably, but you look at the stats from in terms of expected goal saved above average. Reimer in that single game was insane.
Mm-hmm. So, I know. I mean, James Reimer to me is better than Peter Mrazek. Yeah. But that's neither here nor there. So congrats to you. You got it right. I probably shouldn't have picked the Rangers.
No, you should not. I don't know why you did that.
I feel like it was a contrarian pick.
It was 100%.
There was no benefit to being a contrarian.
Well, it wasn't just a contrarian pick. It was a contrarian pick with no logical backing.
There was some backing, but anyway,
not much.
It wasn't good enough. I do want to point out that Igor Shesterkin was injured for the early part of the series. Could have turned the tide. Who knows?
He was not good in game. He was not that good in game 3.
Yeah, well, coming off an injury. That's the thing, though. I have actually a reasonable defense for a lot of the picks that went wrong. So
which Shesterkin would have made that big of a difference in that series. Maybe they win one game. It may have been in 4.
Showed what a goaltender can do.
It may have been in 4.
Okay, let's move on to one that I actually got right. So you had in New York Islanders versus Florida Panthers. You had Florida in 5, and I had Islanders in 4, and I nailed that one right on the head. So as I predicted, the Islanders are just better than the Panthers. The Panthers are not a reliable team. Sergei Bobrovsky might just not be good when he's not playing in John Tortorella's system, and the Panthers offense just wasn't reliable enough, whereas the Islanders stifling, I keep using that word, but it's such a good word, stifling defensive system. It's just too much. The Islanders break analytics. A lot of analytics team or people don't like the Islanders, but they just find a way to break that algorithm because they limit everything to the outside, and they really cut down on those quality chances. And they have just enough talent up front to make you pay. They do struggle a lot when they don't have the lead initially. I noticed that in the one game Florida won, when the Islanders have to catch up, it's a lot tougher sledding for them. But if they get out to a 1-2 goal lead, it's going to be a very slow, boring game, and we saw that in a series.
Yeah. I don't really have a whole lot to say on the series. I was wrong. Didn't really have a strong opinion going in.
I love how you're almost word for word reciting your prediction in our Crash the Pond website article.
Because
to quote Jake Rudolph, I really don't have a strong opinion on the series.
I still don't.
So my internal coin flip landed with the Panthers.
Yep. Sure. So great. I was wrong. Who cares?
Modern poetry at its finest.
One of the 3 that I got wrong.
Okay, let's move on to another contentious debate that we had on our prediction pod. And this one, I annihilated you. So you had Toronto in 3. You had Toronto steamrolling the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
How disrespectful of you. I had Columbus in 5, nailed the winner, and nailed the game. So why don't you give us your thoughts on the series?
I mean, I said last episode that the reason for me going in 3 was kind of along the lines of I expected this entire series to kind of be open hockey because the fact that you had guys coming back that from a 3-month layoff that you weren't going to be able to play that defensive structured hockey that you typically get from a John Tortorella team. And so that would lend itself to the more offensively oriented team to be able to go in and score a bunch of goals, because essentially you had a team that was all offense versus a team that was pretty much all defense. And I banked on the offense cashing in an open series. And as it turns out, that didn't happen. This went the exact opposite game script of what I thought would happen, and the Columbus Blue Jackets ended up winning. I mean, I forgot who, I think it was Dom Luszczyszyn or someone just had tweeted out something along the lines of the Maple Leaf shooting percentage over the course of the series like 1%.
Yeah, I think the Maple Leafs could have easily won this series. It was very close.
Yes. Here we go. 1.97% shooting percentage at 5-on-5.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's that, when you play the way the Leafs do, if your offense doesn't come through for you, they don't have a lot to fall back on. That's kind of the issue with that team, and that's why I felt more comfortable picking Columbus, because I feel like the way that they play is more it's easier to do every game because it's mostly about effort and sticking to the game plan, whereas Toronto, they need the bounces, and if they don't get them, I don't know. I mean,
is it even the bounces?
I don't want to say. Well, you're citing the shooting percentage, which is bounces, but
but a 2% shooting percentage means that it's not necessarily the bounces not going their way. It's just they were snake bitten.
Right, and also, I mean, I don't want this to be a big referendum on the way Toronto plays.
No, I don't either.
But at the same time, I do think that this kind of showed that I think their roster needs a little more balance to it, because they look pretty bad defensively at times. Not throughout the whole series, but that blue line. I mean, they did lose Jake Muzzin early on in a pretty scary moment, but I was not that impressed with their defensive play. And maybe that's unfair because it's a short series. Also, I didn't think Frederik Andersen was great.
No.
I'll have more on that later, but it kind of just felt, it kind of went exactly how you thought it would go if you were a Blue Jackets believer.
Oh, yeah. This played in the script of what the Blue Jackets wanted. I mean, they easily could have won this series in 4. I mean, outside of a miraculous comeback from the Leafs to push it to Game 5, there shouldn't have even been a Game 5, basically. Kind of moving on with this series, though, real quick, now that the Leafs are out, and you mentioned it right there, the fact that the Leafs are a little bit top-heavy in terms of offense, and they don't really have the best depth on the blue line. I have this hot take kind of continuing to go on in my head. And we're not going to really get too much into the draft lottery because we're going to discuss it more in depth tomorrow after it happens. I would love to see the Leafs win it simply because I think that makes it much easier for them to move on from a Mitch Marner or William Nylander and make a move for a defense. And if you're the Ducks, why would you not try to see if you could maybe swing a Mitch Marner for a Hampus Lindholm type deal? And Hampus Lindholm is a guy that is 26, I believe, or maybe, no, he's 27 now.
Yeah.
He's 27, so he's in his prime right now. I mean, this is going to be a tough sell for Ducks fans, but Hampus Lindholm most likely is going to be aged out of his prime with the prime ending around 29.
He's 26, by the way.
He is? I thought he turned 26. Okay, he's 26?
No. Yeah.
Okay. But regardless, so he'll probably be 28, 29, maybe 30 by the time the Ducks are contending. Not just in the playoffs, but contending again.
Why don't you just trade Josh Manson?
I mean, you could, but will Manson get you Marner?
Well, I guess you could. It would be a lower tier deal, but I think you'd rather give up Manson than Lindholm.
True. But my point is, so this all kind of wraps in. The Leafs are probably going to look to move a forward that's paid too much more than they would want for some defense that can help their D. And that's why Lindholm came into my head, because that's the higher ticket type of guy that they would be looking for.
Yeah, you would probably have to move. You'd probably have to move additional pieces if you're the Ducks to get Marner, because you have to make the money work.
Yeah.
And so maybe Raquel is in that deal,
and maybe it becomes a much bigger deal from there. But still, I think that the options become open where the Ducks could potentially get a guy that's 23. That's just entering his prime and kind of aligns with a lot of the Ducks players more so. Keep in mind, Marner's the same age as Troy Terry.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, is a lot of Ducks fans, and I kind of get it, they don't like to hear trade another defenseman, because the Ducks have been doing that nonstop the last couple of years, and look where it's led them. They're one of the worst defensive teams in the league, or at least bottom tier.
Yep.
So what is the rationale? But at this point, what is there left to really save? That they're not a really good defensive group. If you can keep at least like two of the three of Fowler, Lindholm, Manson, and you go get an elite forward that is going to be around for the foreseeable future and that can be a part of that next wave of Ducks, that makes a lot of sense for Anaheim. At some point, you kind of just have to cut the cord on this blue line that, well, I just don't understand why people are so against moving on from any of these guys, because at the end of the day, they have the group as a whole hasn't been that good together for the last almost 3 years now. I think the big sticking point is some people, I think they view them as still being young enough where at 30 they're still going to be in their prime. Only Lindholm is kind of young at this point. Yeah, but even then, he's still in the middle of his prime right now. And I think that's the big thing that we need to make sure we shift our mentality on, is 23 to 30 is probably the prime age for a defenseman, maybe even 29. And so once they get past that, they're going to start declining. And so to me, it's simply resupplying the talent to match up with the contending window. And I've mentioned contending window a bunch on this podcast. That's what the Ducks really need to be focusing on. And yes, you want to have some older guys to be able to help them learn to win and have leadership and all that type of stuff. But if you keep one or two of Fowler or Manson, there's the older guy for this group moving forward that helps them. And so you can fill in guys and you can make trades. The guy that would make sense to move would be Fowler. But the problem is he's got the no trade clause. Yes. Would he accept it? Would he go to Toronto? He might go to Toronto. He might go to Toronto. Windsor. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the few places he'd accept a trade to. And they're a contending team. Yeah, I mean he would be very fun to watch on Toronto. But does he solve their issues? Would they? Well, that's the thing, is I think they need a Lindholm or Manson more. But I think if you're the Ducks, I think you'd probably prefer to keep Fowler and Lindholm out of those three. Manson is the one you want to move off of, but Manson is the one that doesn't net you as much capital. So there's a lot going on there. Yep. But yeah, I think for the Ducks, they do have to be thinking that way a little bit, because it's not really going to happen through the draft at this point. No. 6th overall pick is good, but it's not it's not a cure-all.
You've got to get
ways.
creative. And so if the Leafs win, I mean, the Leafs may move a guy no matter what, even if they don't win Lafreniere. But if you get Lafreniere, then it makes it even easier to make that decision because you have a cheap guy that's going to be coming in and taking over that production.
Right. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. Maybe the Ducks do kind of come to reason. We'll see. I think at this point it's getting hard to defend just clinging to this blue line, especially because the Ducks don't look that great for next year either.
Well, it's getting hard to defend this core as being a core that can lead you to the playoffs. I mean, the fact that the Ducks are in a rebuild kind of tells you that this core isn't good enough, that they need to retool and get people in that will help out the next core. And
the Ducks made the playoffs 3 years ago, but they didn't win a game, and they did not look that great doing it.
No.
So they realistically have not been a playoff caliber team in about 4 years.
Yeah. So I think that these are the types of moves that the Ducks should be looking to make. These are the types of moves where you're getting an exciting talent that can come and bring in goals, and is also younger and fits with the next contending window.
Would you move? I mean, just in theory, would you move the 6th overall pick to get a Marner?
No.
Is that where you draw the line?
That's where I draw the line. I don't think you move 6.
So what about Lindholm, Raquel, and Boston's pick?
I don't know if so. I think Lindholm for Marner may work.
Well, the thing is, you don't have the cap space if you're the Ducks, or you have to actually use your LTIR,
which is fine. They have the LTIR.
The Ducks, for a bad team, hilariously have very little cap space.
But they have a bunch of LTIR, and I think that's
they do.
But
that's
I'm just the key thing there.
Yeah, that's not gonna last forever either.
No, but Kessler's contract's going to come off. Kessler's contract's going to come off the books eventually. I think that you could reasonably make the argument that Lindholm for Marner could work by itself because of the cap hits.
Yeah, well,
we'll see. Lindholm being only 5.2, and what is Marner at? 10? Is that right?
10, 11, something crazy.
Something around there. I'll look that up right now, but something along those lines.
Yes. Well, let's see for Marner really quickly.
10.89.
10.89. Yeah. So he is way up there, but he's worth it.
Yeah.
He was not the reason that the Leafs lost that series. So let's get through these last few predictions here. So we were both wrong on this one. We both had the Oilers beating the Blackhawks. I had the Oilers in a sweep. You had it going 5 games, and we were both very wrong on the Chicago Blackhawks, who I don't know what they really did to win that series. They won it in 4 games, but maybe it's just because they were playing a very mediocre Oilers team that got exposed. I don't know what to make of that.
Here's what they did. They played a team that had Mike Smith in goal and replaced him with Mikko Koskinen.
Yeah, that doesn't usually help.
That
if you're trying to win.
Because you look at expected goals for, the Oilers were the better team, and by a significant margin in this series. The Blackhawks basically made out with PDO, which is a sign that the Oilers' goaltending was just that bad.
Do you think the Blackhawks win a game in round 1?
No.
I'm still going to bet against them being swept every round they play.
I will be shocked if they win a game. That is how confident I am that Vegas is going to sweep.
I feel bad for Connor McDavid because he's catching flack for that loss, and I really...
We'll get into that more later.
Okay. Well, you gave something away there,
Maybe.
But that's fine.
People don't know. People don't know what's coming. We haven't publicized what we're doing on the show yet.
Only I know. Yes. Okay. So Nashville, Arizona. You had Arizona in 4, and I had Nashville in 4. Clearly, I was wrong there. It was a very competitive series, though. I will say you nailed the games and the pick. Predators probably should have won this series.
Probably.
I mean, they dominated it. They almost dominated every game, but it's a short series. That stuff doesn't really matter sometimes.
Yep.
Darcy Kemper came through, and I feel kind of bad for the Predators because I feel like they're going to look at themselves and say, what is wrong with us? But they kind of did everything they could. They didn't catch the breaks.
I don't think any team should have a referendum on their team and kind of have to go soul searching off of a 5-game series.
But it's the NHL.
Oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But no, yes. I think people should understand that randomness happens. But yeah, I mean, Arizona won. I mean, sure, Darcy Kemper was great, and that's probably why they won. But let's go. The real reason they won is the power of the Kachina jersey. Those jerseys propelled them.
They are very good. They need to get a white version for next season.
That needs to become their jersey. I don't know why it's not.
They need to bring that back. I get why they are sticking to the other look because it is a bit more mainstream, but people just love the Kachina.
Don't they have new ownership now from when they changed to the current home and away? So it wouldn't shock me if they made the change for next season. I mean, it's telling that they went with the Kachina jerseys for their home jersey. A lot of times when you see teams make that transition to wearing their third jersey as the home jersey for the playoffs, they then come out with an away version of it. I mean, the Ducks
did that.
The Ducks did that. You also have had the Oilers did that with their orange jersey. There's
that orange jersey is awful.
Oh yeah, it's not good. But
it's truly one of the worst.
I think the Wild have done that. Speaking of jerseys, real quick.
The Wild have shifted to a green main jersey. So and because they brought out that really cool looking kind of green and wheat colored third, and they use that in the playoffs. Here's what's interesting to me: the Carolina Hurricanes love their black alternate jersey.
Yeah,
I don't love it as much as their home jersey.
I don't either.
I just don't like the flag logo. I wish if it was their standard logo, it could be their home. But I think the red is just more classic for them. Anyway, this is gonna turn into a jersey pod, which seems to happen with our podcast.
Speaking of jersey pods, it looks like Buffalo has announced they're returning to royal blue.
Yeah, well, that's been known. That's been out there. Sorry. Vancouver, Minnesota. So that one went the way of the Vancouver Canucks. They took it in 4 games. You had Vancouver in 5, and I had Vancouver in 5 as well. So neither of us got the games, but we did get the team.
Yep.
I fell in love with the Minnesota Wild in this series.
You became the biggest Kevin Fiala fan I think there is.
Kevin Fiala is just a very fun player to watch. I mean, the rest of their team is not that inspiring because they have so many guys who are just not going to be around in the next 2 to 3 years with like Zach Parise and Eric Stahl. But Kevin Fiala can just rip the puck. I mean, was it game 2 or 3 where he had 2 goals?
Yeah.
Or was it, and there was a one-timer and then this crazy kind of
he was good
short wind-up, sniping it short side. I mean, that trade is looking awful for Nashville.
And I will say, I feel for Minnesota fans that they didn't have Kaprizov in this series.
Yeah.
Because that could have been the difference maker.
So before the NHL returned, we had talked about Lafreniere potentially went to Minnesota, and I was very vocal that I did not care for that. It's just not a franchise that excited me. I'm gonna walk that all the way back now. give me Lafreniere with Fiala, Kaprizov, Galchenyuk. Just give it to me now. I'm ready for that.
It's gonna be that is the place that I want Lafreniere to go.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that on our bonus pod tomorrow. So let's round it out with what was easily the worst series. I mean, it's not even close to me in terms of entertainment value, in terms of just everything. This was an awful series. You had Calgary in 3, Calgary against Winnipeg. I had Winnipeg in 5. I will say, heavy asterisk on this one. Injuries all over the place. So Calgary 1 and 4, but Patrick Laine went out after game 1, or was it game 2? Mark Scheifele was out after game 1.
Both were out after game 1, I believe.
Yeah, they were just dropping like flies. So heavy asterisk, but you do get the win on this one. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a bland series that I'm not going to devote much time to it, but congrats to you.
Yep. I mean, I called it.
Congrats to you and your asterisk.
Jets were one of the Jets. So the Jets were the worst team in the league this year at 5-on-5.
I also concluded that I really don't want to see Alexis Lafreniere waste away in Winnipeg.
I wouldn't mind him in Winnipeg. You know what? Let's just go over this real quick. Here are the teams. Now we've gone through this. Here are the teams that he could potentially go to, and I'm going to run through them, and you'll just say yes or no, and I'll add yes or no.
Okay.
So you have Pittsburgh.
No.
New York Rangers.
Yes.
Florida.
Yes.
Toronto.
No.
Yes, because I love chaos. Edmonton.
No.
No.
God, no.
Nashville.
Leaning towards yes, so I'll go yes.
Yeah, hard no. Hard pass. Minnesota.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, that is my top destination. Winnipeg.
Winnipeg. No.
Out of those, Winnipeg's a yes for me. After going through the rest of the teams, Winnipeg's a yes.
I think the top for me is Rangers because it's an original 6 franchise that is not the Toronto Maple Leafs.
They did get Kako last year. I'm just iffy.
I just think that he would be a lot of fun on
he
that
would be.
particular team.
That's fair.
They already have kind of a fun core, and I think you put him in there and they get a lot more exciting. And I feel the same way about Florida as well. I think if you put him on Florida, I think that could be interesting. Minnesota, we've talked about it. But yeah, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Edmonton are just hard nose for me. I just anything. Honestly, at this point, I would just take anything but Edmonton because we all know that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get down the list here of our topics. Let's move on to the next thing. So the hero of the week. So for the foreseeable future on our Sunday pods, we're going to be doing categories and we're going to be handing out awards. So we're going to do Hero of the Week to start it off. We'll keep the suspense rolling to find out what the awards are as we move along. Hero of the Week. Who is your Hero of the Week?
My Hero of the Week is going to be the one and only Sebastian Aho. 8 points in 3 games. Just so good. And that goal where they scored going inside out on Tony DeAngelo and going backhand shelf was just so beautiful.
On his knees. Falling on his knees. Just
so good. 3 goals, 2 primary assists, 3 secondary assists. So 5 of those 8 were primary points. Just so good. Individual expected.
Why did you have to bring him up?
Because he was why are you so mad? The RFA. That's right.
Yes.
I forgot. I actually had forgotten about that completely.
Still salty about that. It's okay.
15 shot attempts in the 3 games, in all situations. 30% shooting, so probably not going to stay that high. But individual expected goal total at 1.86. So he's getting chances in dangerous spots and doing a whole lot of good with it and putting the puck in the back of the net and being a difference maker for Carolina and being a superstar.
Yeah, Sebastian Aho's backhand falling to his knees was better than my best backhand that I could muster with like a head start going into it that I could ever hope for. So that was a sick goal. And a good pick for you, but not the correct pick. The correct answer here, Hero of the Week, Carey Price. I mean, is there fair. Really any, I mean, I don't know if it's fair to pick a goalie, but
I left him for you.
He was just that's what I kind of figured. You wouldn't steal my shine. He was just so very good. He turned back the clock to his MVP years, and I really now believe that. I mean, it's a small sample. You don't want to take too much away from it, but a rested Carey Price can still be maybe not this Herculean, but he can still be a quality starter in the NHL. The Canadians have failed to provide him with a good backup in the last however many years. I mean, at least 3 years, and this should be all the motivation in the world that Marc Bergevin needs to go and get a quality backup. If not a guy that can even split the games, just keep Carey Price on ice until the playoffs.
Yeah.
Whatever you have to do. Led the qualifying round in a goal saved above expected, right above Carter Hart. So that's going to be interesting for the for their matchup. So it's Carey Price for me. That is the correct answer. But I will concede that Sebastian Aho is a good pick. Let's go zero of the week now. So we're just going to switch it all up and go full negative here. Who is your zero of the week?
My zero of the week is collective Edmonton goaltending. I mean,
that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one.
What more can you say? Mikko Koskinen played played in 4 games because he came in for Mike Smith in game 1. Negative 1.8 GSAX. You also had Mike Smith. I don't think he played enough. Let me see where he was at actually in terms of negative GSAX when I adjust some things here. But he was pretty bad also over the course of the single game that he played. You look at the Oilers on this series, they were the better team. They were better than Chicago, and they were just extremely let down by their goaltending. And
how can your goaltending be that bad? That is my question. How is that the best you can come up with? Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So Mike Smith, in the single game he played, was the second worst goalie out of the first round.
And I just love that it took him, one period to let in a goal by mishandling the puck behind the net.
Butt
classic Mike Smith.
But goal. Negative
Yeah.
3.25 goal saved above expected for him. Koskinen over the next games was better, but still negative. And that's the difference for the Oilers. If they got an average goalie, they probably win that series.
Mike Smith does this weird thing where he will have a good year and trick everyone into thinking that he's not Mike Smith anymore, and then he hoodwinks them the next year.
It's off and on. It's off and on. He has one good
that,
year, one bad year, one good year, one bad year.
I just don't know why, as a GM, you would buy into that at all.
Well, I mean, it's the Oilers.
It's the Oilers.
I mean,
God bless them.
There's
the Oilers.
I mean, you have the Zach Cassian deal. I saw a great thread about that was just absolutely trashing Ken Holland on that deal, and just it's bad.
Ken Holland is massively overrated as a GM.
Yeah.
Speaking of general managers, my 0 of the week, the now former general manager of the Florida Panthers, Dale Talon.
Ooh.
So I'm going a little off script here.
For whatever reason, I thought you were going to go Chayka there, but when I heard now former, but
yeah, I mean, he doesn't qualify for this award in my opinion.
No, he does not. It's just I heard now former and instantly went to Chayka.
Dale Talon was fired as soon as the Panthers were eliminated, which says a lot about how things have gone for Florida over the last few years. But if you'll recall, I believe it was Dale Talon who oversaw both Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault being claimed by Vegas in the expansion draft.
Yes.
And
he also traded away Vincent Trocheck at this deadline.
Yeah, his whole tenure has been kind of looked at by some as this pushback on analytics and how the Panthers were quote unquote an analytics team before him. That's kind of dubious anyway, but there was a lot of talk about how he was coming in to clean it up. He even had a quote, "Thank God I'm back," something like that. And yeah, didn't work out too well for old Dale Talon. You look at the position he's left the Florida Panthers in, signed Sergei Bobrovsky to an insane contract, 8 years, $10 million a year, and with a full no move clause. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that that's not looking pretty good right now for the Florida Panthers. And so, sorry, it was a 7-year deal. My apologies. Anyway, horrendous signing. You should never sign a goalie for that long at age 31. And then has just kind of hemorrhaged talent the last few years from this team.
I'm going through his trades of recent years. Vincent Trocheck is a weird one. Granted, he got decent return on him. Trading away James Reimer is an odd one to me still, to get Scott Darling and a 6th-round pick. And Reimer really showed what he could do this past year. Trading away Jared McCann and Nick Bukestad for, granted, that's a decent trade for a bunch of picks.
Well, look at the Michael Matheson contract. I mean,
yeah,
this
the contracts
crazy
are great.
long-term deal for a kind of just whatever defenseman, and just constantly trying to buy success or lateral move your way to success. It just hasn't really worked at all. I mean,
wait. So you're telling me that making deck chair shuffling moves does not help you be successful? Is that what you're telling me right now?
I knew you were going to pick up on that.
You said that I don't know if you were doing that to bait me there, but
I actually wasn't. It was inadvertent.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, I think the Florida Panthers are in a better place now that they don't have Dale Talon. I don't know where they go from here, but he is my 0 of the week because I really think his tenure in Florida was just truly, truly unsuccessful. Even though they were an okay team this year in the regular season pre-shutdown, but yeah, just a 0. Let's move on here to a more joyful topic: former Duck spotlight. So who do you have? I can't imagine who you have, honestly, but just go for it.
This is a fun topic that I decided to throw in to keep all Ducks fans kind of listening and tuned in, because I think that's one fun thing of the playoffs is
taking credit,
seeing former Ducks. I mean, sure. I mean, I came up with it, so taking the credit. I'm gonna go with Sammy Vaughtman.
Interesting.
He's a player that I had actually forgotten got traded to the Hurricanes until the very first game, and I was like, oh wait, there is Sammy, and he was featured in a fairly prominent role, playing 57 minutes over those 3 games that they played, and was pretty featured on the power play with Dougie Hamilton being out, and he had 3 points over the course of those games. His 5-on-5 numbers weren't amazing, but he was a positive contributor, and really the reason why you have Sammy Vaughtman is to have his ability on the to quarterback a power play, and that's what we saw. And so wanted to give him a little bit of spotlight because Sammy Vaughtman was one of my favorite Ducks when he was here.
So my spotlight is a bit of a low light, and I do apologize to Frederik Andersen and his family, but he was not very good in this round for Toronto. And he's not the reason they lost. We already talked about that. But the goal he let in, the second goal that Columbus scored in the deciding Game 5, felt very, very familiar, very reminiscent of the goal he allowed from the corner
To
along
Jonathan
the goal line
Toews.
to Jonathan Toews in Game 7
Yeah.
of the 2015 Western Conference
Thanks
Final.
for bringing that up.
Yeah, well, it was a kind of similar goal, dead angle goal in a deciding game, and squeaks through his pad or his arms, whatever it was, and it ends up costing the Leafs a shot at moving on. Now, of course, like I said, it's not all his fault, but a lot of people at the time kind of panned the decision to move on from Frederik Andersen and really put all the faith in John Gibson. And I'm just going to take this moment to say that the Ducks made the right decision there.
Yeah, they 100% made the right decision. I was a bigger Anderson fan at the time than I was a Gibson fan, but the correct decision was made. Gibson was the better goalie. He was always projecting to be the better goalie. Anderson was the guy that was probably going to help a team more at that time than Gibson was, but Gibson has definitely become the better goalie out of the two.
He's exceeded the hype, I think.
Yes.
Which doesn't always happen, but he's managed to do it. So I was going to maybe throw in Corey Perry, who did have a goal in the round robin. I actually thought you were going to go with Corey Perry, even though he only had one goal, but I thought that's where you were going.
The round robins were a thing that happened?
Yeah, they were. They were. I think I didn't watch any games start to finish in the round robin. I did watch them in bits and pieces, but
I watched
didn't sit down and kind of just stay fixated on any of them.
The Vegas Colorado game was very good.
That was a good one. That's probably the one I watched the most. But yeah, they kind of. I think you made a good point earlier in the week, or maybe on our last pod, that the NHL really nailed the qualifiers, but kind of just said, eh.
I think I was actually in my weekly article that you're going to find once a week on the website. Go to crashthepond.com for it.
It was in your article. It was like, we'll just kind of do this thing for the round robin, and no one will notice because everyone's watching the qualifiers.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But yeah, Freddie Andersen for me and Sammy Vaughtman for you. Okay, to finish up here, narrative that is good or awful. So I'll just start with this one. I know you have a few. I have one that's kind of simple. The narrative that the players are hyping themselves up from the bench because of the lack of a crowd. So this has been a theme on every broadcast that I've watched. It's, oh, look at how loud the players are, how vocal they are from the bench due to the lack of the crowd. And I have a newsflash. If you've ever watched a mic'd up video of any NHL team, the players are always yelling from the bench. They are always talking. They are always going 110%. Crowd or not. And I'm not saying this because I want to denigrate crowds and say that they don't matter. Of course they do matter, but I just got so tired of hearing that on every broadcast. Oh, the players are having to hype themselves. I was like, no, they're not. They're playing for the Stanley Cup. They're playing for their lives. They're playing for all these things that come with success. I don't think they need any additional motivation. And so that was one narrative that got old and tiring, and I just wanted to kind of
I feel like we could change this because most narratives aren't good if we're focusing on them. This is just
there could be a good narrative.
This is an awful narrative. I mean, so I have two. One of them I've actually scratched after looking at some numbers, but the two that I have, one I heard in today's game, one is one that we saw earlier on in the week, and I feel like has definitely manifested since, but that Connor McDavid cannot lead the Oilers, and he's the reason why they lost. Connor McDavid is not the reason they lost that series. He is so good and actually had an insane series if you look at expected goals for percentage. I believe he was one of the best players in the league in terms of driving play. I'm trying to get it open very quickly right now so that I can give you those exact numbers. But if you want to try to focus on a reason why why a team lost, trying to say that Connor McDavid cannot lead a team is just complete BS. That's beyond the there's no kind of backing behind that. Connor McDavid, so here we go. 64.39 expected goals for percentage while he was on the ice, where he had a 49.56 goals for percentage. That's not him letting the team down, that's the team letting him down. And if you were to look at box score stats as compared to just on ice stuff, And these box score stats come in all situations, so not just in 5-on-5. He led the entire qualifying round in points. He had 9 points in 4 games. I said that Sebastian Aho was a hero with 8 points in 3 games. McDavid was not as good as that on a point per game basis, but pretty damn close with 9 points in 4, including 5 goals. 5 goals, 2 assists, or 2 primary assists, 2 secondary assists. That's 7 primary points in 4 games. And people want to say he's the reason they lost. It's just baffling.
Well,
Absolutely
it's
baffling.
not just that he was the reason they lost. People are saying that he's not charismatic enough, that he doesn't inspire his teammates enough.
Yeah,
that's
who.
I don't know how anyone would even know if he
Well,
how are we supposed to know how he affects the morale of his teammates?
Why does it matter if he scores 7 primary points in 4 games?
Well, I agree with you. I just think that it's so ridiculous to comment on something that you have no way of verifying.
Yeah.
It's just this unknown that we're supposed to judge from this very limited sample that we have when it comes to charisma.
It's almost as if having bad goalies lost the series for the Oilers,
Yes.
and that's on the general manager, not
also,
on the best player in the league.
I just don't understand. It goes back to this whole thing of why does a guy have to be shouting from the mountaintop, the rah-rah leader, to be qualified as a great leader?
Scott Niedermeyer was not that for the Ducks, and it was widely reported that he was a lead-by-example type of guy, and Chris Pronger was the more loudmouth in the locker room, and Scott Niedermeyer was the captain.
Yeah. Yeah, Zach Cassian is the loudmouth for the Oilers. They don't need Connor McDavid to be that.
Okay, and
Yes.
the other narrative that I just laughed at today, granted, it's not as big of a narrative, but it was one that just made me chuckle, was Mike Milbury on the broadcast tried to say in Game 4 for the Maple Leafs against the Blue Jackets that Jason Spezza's fight was the turning point in the game for them, that this fight that happened 13 minutes and 52 seconds into the second period when it was 2-0 against the Maple Leafs, that was the turning point, completely ignoring the fact that there was a period intermission. The Blue Jackets scored another goal in the third period, and then the Leafs mounted their comeback with 3 minutes left. It's almost as if people try to overhype the narrative that fights energize a team and try to construct it to help their point that fights matter, when in reality, it didn't really actually do a whole lot. Like, it probably helped a little bit, but the narrative that's the turning point in that game is just...
No.
It was beyond belief for me hearing him say that.
We're going to have to come up with some positive narratives because I think this is going to become... We could just say, what is the bad narrative?
Yeah, that was what I was saying. Oh, this is a zero of the week. Lewis asked this question, and it goes along with the zero. NBC not having a shot counter.
Yeah,
it's 2020.
That is becoming almost untenable. It is untenable in the year 2020 because almost every other network has it. All the regional sports networks have it.
Sportsnet has it.
Sportsnet has it. It's just insane. And also, what makes it more frustrating is that they will actually put up the shot count, but it just won't stay there. And they'll even put shot attempts. It's like, just leave it there. Just stay. Yeah. Stay, please.
It's insane to me. Also, I want them to do more with camera angles. Give me even more weird camera angles.
Here's my question. What is the best broadcast crew so far for NBC? What's the one you enjoy the most?
For NBC, take out Milbury and just do Forsland and Boucher, and that's probably the best that NBC has to offer.
No love for McGuire?
I think no. Between the two guys that are between the glass, between Pierre McGuire and Brian Boucher, I'll take Brian Boucher every day of the week. I think John Forsland's the best play-by-play that they have, play-by-play guy. Although I will give a shout-out. I think having Mike Tirico calling hockey games is amazing. He's just a guy that has a great voice, and you can tell he does his research because, I mean, for those of you who don't know, Mike Tirico is kind of a catch-all type of guy. He's covered the World Cup in the past. He covers football a lot and will call football games, and basically was brought in by NBC, I think from ESPN, to basically cover the Olympics and kind of take over Bob Costas' role moving forward. And now they're kind of deploying him as a catch-all for almost all different sports that they have. And it's fantastic to hear him call hockey games because he just has such a distinguishable voice, and I'm really, really happy with the games he's called.
Yeah, absolutely. He was great. I think The only other thing I'll mention about the broadcasting, I don't know if I don't know how many people that listen to our show caught this, but I was watching the Sportsnet feed for the Leafs comeback, the when they won in overtime with Matthews scoring. Jim Houston, when Austin Matthews scores, and he just says Kasperi Kapanen, and then you hear the other commentators say Matthews, it's Matthews. He's like, oh, Austin Matthews. It's just like, how do you? I mean, I know it happens, and I don't want to go too hard on him, but he calls Leafs games for a living. How do you mistake Kapanen with Matthews? I know their numbers look similar, but I think they're different handedness. So anyway,
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. Yeah, it's been a great week. Honestly, this has been awesome. Hockey is back, and now the playoffs start. Now
Yeah.
we always talk. Every year we talk about how the first round is the best time of the year. So we just got this amazing qualifying round, and now we get the first round.
Now that the qualifying round is over, let's circle back to a conversation real quick before we kind of wrap up, because we're just past the hour mark here, so we'll probably wrap up kind of soon. But let's circle back to a conversation you, me, and CJ had multiple times, more so in our text messages than I think on the show, about whether we considered it the playoffs or not. Not about the NHL and their weird, wacky definition, but if you don't consider the play in the playoffs, then technically the Oilers, the Leafs, the Penguins, all of these teams are not playoff teams. Do you think that is correct, or would you consider them, if you were to look back, that they were a playoff team this year?
I mean, were they a playoff caliber team? Sure, but I don't know if I can consider this the playoffs when you have the 12th seeded teams in the playoff in these qualifying.
But if you
rounds.
know there was a best of 5 that is random, like we talked about the Oilers and their goaltending giving up, screwing them over, the Oilers had a playoff spot basically locked up by the time this stopped.
I understand. It's honestly, nothing makes sense.
No, that's fair. I think
know.
that people will look back on this year and just have a big asterisk. But
yeah, like this is so. I mean, hopefully this is so unique and not to be repeated again that I'm just kind of throwing my hands up at this.
Yep, and just enjoy it. But I think that we'll probably get 2 weeks before the next round ends. Is about probably, because I think the first round typically takes about 2 weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks now. Yeah, so the game 7s are all slated for the 23rd at the latest. So, yeah, the next couple weeks. Let me just ask you this to wrap things up. What's the first round series that you're the most excited for?
The first round series that I am most excited for. I mean,
Boston, Carolina?
Let me give one East, one West. Boston, Carolina in the East, because I think Boston got screwed by this entire format with the round robin, and I think Carolina also gets screwed by it by being the 5th seed. They're supposed to get the easiest matchup, and they potentially get the hardest one. So to me, that is a really good series.
Well, Boston went 0-3 in the round robin. So are they the hardest matchup?
I mean, who knows when it actually push comes to shove and they're in a knockout game, in a knockout series, if that play still stands. So
also, who knows what their lineup is going to be.
True. So I'm interested to see that series, no doubt. I think the Western series I'm interested to see is the one I do not expect to last that long, which is Vegas-Chicago.
Really? Why is that the one that's the most interesting?
Because I want to see the numbers play out correctly and have a team that is just better, dominate, and crush.
So overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's one of those where I want to watch because I just want to see Chicago not be able to get out of their own zone.
Yeah, that could be really ugly for sure. I mean,
it will be hilariously bad.
There's going to be at least one game where the shots are going to be some ridiculous disparity after one period, like 30-7 or something.
Yeah, that series, the disparity of talent between those two teams is so huge. You could maybe make the argument that the forward groups of the two are equal in terms of the high-end talent, at least.
I don't think so.
That you could maybe make the argument about the high-end talent, but the depth easily goes to Vegas.
Patrick Kane has become very overrated.
True.
In watching his games, and
I'm just saying there's an argument.
I understand, but a lot of people say that about Chicago, and I think when you look at their team and you actually watch them closely and look at the numbers, Patrick Kane, if he doesn't have the puck on his stick, is not doing a lot of moving.
Yeah.
He's that guy who's just coasting for points, like in beer league, basically.
So for this,
that's what he reminds me of.
So in this past season, Vegas had an expected goals for percentage of 56.45%. Chicago, on the other hand, had an expected goals for percentage of 47.38.
I'm actually shocked it's that high. I thought it was going to be
They're
even lower.
They're 26th in the league.
Yeah,
This
not
is
good.
This is a matchup of the best team in the league at 5-on-5 versus one of the worst.
Should be fun. Should be fun if you're a Vegas fan.
Well,
What if Chicago pulls the upset?
You also have the goalie that Chicago traded away going up against them.
Yeah, no, it should be a sweep, but
It should.
I would kind of love it if it wasn't. So outside of the Canadiens Flyers series, which is obviously the one I am the most excited for as a fan of the team, it's actually probably the best matchup in the East, I would argue.
Yeah.
The matchup I'm the most excited to see, I think it's Lightning Columbus. How could it not be? I mean, the Blue Jackets pulled the insane upset last year, not only beating the Lightning, but sweeping them. They just beat another team that really resembles the Lightning. I mean, down to even the jersey colors and pattern. And the Lightning didn't look awesome in the round robin. I mean, those were obviously games that didn't matter at all for them. So I'm just curious how this is going to play out. I really think the Blue Jackets could do it again. I'm almost tempted to pick the Blue Jackets to win again.
Wow.
Why not? Yeah, I mean, hey, it's not an official prediction, but I don't know. I mean, Steven Stamkos, he's out indefinitely. John Cooper literally told the media to stop asking about Steven Stamkos. Do the Lightning need him to beat the Blue Jackets? No. Would I feel more confident in the Lightning if they had him? Yes. So it'll be really interesting. In the West, outside of the series you just mentioned, I'm going to go with Avalanche Coyotes. I think that I love watching the Avalanche play, and I'm just wondering, now that the Coyotes are playing a team that's of a much higher caliber in the Avalanche, how will they respond? Because they kind of snuck by Nashville, but Nashville is not a perfect team by any means. Colorado is much closer to being perfect, and I'm just curious what they will look like in that setting. So it'll be interesting.
By the way, for anyone that cares about how predictive models worked for the first round, the best one in terms of predicting the first round was Micah Blake McCurdy's Ineffective Math. Second was Evolving Wild. Third, Money Puck.
Interesting.
So, interesting. Not really anything of importance there, but just an interesting thing.
Well, on that note, we are going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for listening. A couple of different ways that you can support the show. We've talked about it at least 5 or so times in the show now, but we do have a Patreon page, and we've been keeping it going all throughout the last few months. And now that we have new stuff to talk about, we're ramping it up. So for $1 a month, you can join our patrons only Discord chat, which has honestly gotten really awesome in these playoffs. I mean, everybody coming in to roast me when the Canadiens are actually winning. All the banter about the different games and when Ducks news breaks. So it's a lot of fun. And obviously, once we get back to normal, whenever that is, cross our fingers, we also do live in-game chats when the Ducks are playing. So that Discord chat is a lot of fun, especially if you're a diehard fan and you kind of want to just chat with people who kind of see the game like you do. Now, for $5 a month, you get that same access to the chat, but you also get access to those bonus episodes we've been talking about. It's 2 bonus episodes a month for $5. It's honestly, if you enjoy this show, if you enjoy what we do, it's really an easy way to support us. Now, a way to support us that doesn't cost you anything, but that still has a big effect, just search for us on Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. Those go a really long way. They take maybe 2 minutes to fill out, maybe a little longer if you want to be more heartfelt, but we really appreciate hearing from you. The Pond on Apple Podcasts. And then as far as another way to support the show, you can check us out on crashthepond.com. You can also check out Jake on Twitter at reindeergames91, and I'm on Twitter at Felix_.
Did you mention Twitch?
Yeah, and also when we do these pods, we are broadcasting them live on Twitch, so that's at twitch.tv/crashthepond. So, Jake, you want to explain to everybody how
Yep.
that works?
So if you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. And so all you have to do is hit that subscribe button after you link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. It is completely free to you, and it's a way to support us that really does help out significantly. With that, you get special badges in the chat, special emotes that will come in for you specific to this broadcast. And it's a lot of fun, and it helps us out more than you can imagine. And I'm not sure if Felix mentioned because he cut out slightly there. So for the video feed, sorry about that slightly. But for the Patreon, we will be recording one tomorrow night. We mentioned it slightly, but as you listen to this, it will actually be tonight we're recording it. But we will be going over the impact of that draft lottery and how the fallout, who will get Alexis Lafreniere from that. And we'll also be going in depth on all of the first round previews and giving you our full thoughts. We'll probably have an article up on the site with more brief thoughts. So our picks should be on the website, but the more in-depth reaction and everything like that. And you can hear me and Felix kind of get into it like we did last round. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I need a big bounce back.
Maybe you should take my advice when we're really on the opposite sides of arguments, because as it turns out, majority of the things that we got into an argument over, I was correct on.
Yeah, but injuries. Injuries.
Sure.
Never forget injuries.
Sure.
All right, folks. Well, hey, thanks to everybody for listening. Hope you have a great week, and we will catch you next Sunday. Talk to you then.
Bye.